A big weekend. You had a season launch at the Dubbo Regional Theatre and Convention Centre. How did that go? I see some people hobnobbing with you.
I'm not sure if it's hobnobbing with me or me hobnobbing with other people, but it is a really great event that and just highlights some of the various acts that we're going to see next year. And I actually reflected, I got to talk on stage amongst all the very talented people there as well, but I did reflect a little bit on the actual theatre itself. And I remember way back when we were looking at the theatre, discussing the theatre, talking about it, there was a bit of opposition around the community about that theatre, and some people saying we couldn't afford it, didn't need it, a whole range of things. And I think a lot of those fears got put to bed on the 17th of April 2010 when it opened. We had Hotel California sold out. The next day, Kamal sold out. And suddenly people thought, wow, we're getting some really good acts. This is after 2 days of the theatre. Fast forward now, here we are 12 years later, several 100,000 people have been through there. It is an international world-class stage and performance venue, and people that are international artists want to come and be there.
But off the back of that, you don't have to be someone that enjoys the theatre because there's always something for everyone.
Well, this is the thing. A lot of people thought at the time, I don't want to go to the theatre because I don't want to see men in tights dancing on stage or whatever their particular area they didn't have any interest in. Now, yes, we do have ballet there. We do have philharmonic orchestras, but we have the Sydney Comedy Festival. We have the Melbourne Comedy Festival. One show that I'm definitely going to go and see next year, which I've been to see before here at the Dubbo Regional Theatre, is the Umbilical Brothers. Love them, think they're absolutely hilarious, very clever. So they'll be here again next year. So you get a whole variety of acts, but what people don't also realise is that you'll have school award nights at the end of a year where they'll have that in the theatre. You'll have performances by school groups, by Dubbo Theatrical Company, so you've got amateur groups as well, but they've got this world-class stage. So everyone, be it from absolutely international standard acts down to school groups trying to work out how to make things happen, all on that stage. But I think that's where people missed the point many years ago, that it isn't just about men in tights running around on stage. And nothing against men in tights if you like that, but it's a whole variety of things.
We just have to watch the Toyota Tour to O-Rock, don't we?
That's right.
For that sort of thing. But it is the biggest on this side of the Great Divide, the stage, and it is well sought after. So we're pretty lucky when you think about how far out in the country we are.
Nothing to do with luck, Brett. That was a campaign by a number of people in our community, and then obviously a council of the day put it all together. So a lot of good planning and making sure it was appropriate for out here. And some people said only 500 seats. Why are you doing 1,000 seats or 2,000 seats? And there's a few reasons for that. One of those is the actual cost of it. $18 million we spent on that theatre as it was. So that's still an expensive build. But 500 seats seems to be a good number for these acts that come, and some of them, so Kitty Flanagan was here recently, she did 2 shows and kind of back to back. So if there are big acts like that know they can sell more than 500 seats, they can put on 2 shows, but 500 seats seems to be a good number for most shows. All
right, that's pretty good. Also, visitor numbers in October have remained strong despite adverse weather. It looks like even occupancy rates of 81.5% in Dubbo, 55.5% in Wellington. Now, the visitation figures were above the 4-year average. This is great news.
It is.
But it's not being compared during the COVID lockdown yet.
Well, a little bit it is, because what we look at normally is how we're going this year compared to last year. Well, at this stage, it's a bit irrelevant comparing to last year because there were so many lockdowns and so many restrictions. So it's silly to look at just last year. So to give us some sort of indication, we're actually doing comparisons now with the 4-year average, which does incorporate, obviously, a quarter of last year, but it gives us more an indication of what's happening overall. And so those numbers, as you say, are strong across a range of our visitor attractions, things like the Royal Flying Doctor Service visitor experience, things like the Old Dubbo Jail, things like the zoo. But the occupancy rates, that's a really good one as well, to get an indication of how many people are staying here, because we often talk about it. And actually one thing about the theatre, just jumping back to the theatre for a second, is it's actually a tourist attraction, which sounds crazy. People don't come to the theatre to look at the theatre. No, they don't. But when they come to see a show, we find that over 30% of ticket sales are from outside the Dubbo LGA. So when they come to see a show, they'll often stay at a motel, go out, do some retail shopping, maybe go to a restaurant. So it's actually become a tourist attraction in its own right because people are coming to visit that. So when you get all that and that occupancy rate for motels shows you that there's some really strong visitation in Dubbo.
Is it fair to say that the Old Dubbo Jail is Dubbo's darkest tourist attraction? Because I know some media is labelling it that way, and they've had success again last week with another award.
They did. Actually, we were at the council meeting. I would have loved to have been at the award ceremony, but there's a council meeting on Thursday night. But there's an awards called the Imagine Awards, and we actually picked up a prize in that, and that's based on our new gallows display. As you know, we won an award the previous week as well, and that was on cultural tourism again, based on that new gallows display. 8 people were hung at the Old Jail, and that's where people are probably calling it a very dark tourist attraction. And that is a reflection on our past. Obviously, we don't have capital punishment in this nation anymore, but we did. And the fact that 8 people here in this city, not very far from where we're sitting right now, Brett, were actually hung as part of the capital punishment program, but a lot more than that were on death row. And so this new display has got the lives and the stories of all those people that were on death row, including the 8 that were eventually hung there, and some of the tools and equipment that were used. Now, they look fairly grotesque now when we look at them, and I've taken some of my kids through, and they're looking at some of these various tools of the trade, and they're quite horrified that these were used by humans on humans. But we're using our current thinking to try and look back at a long time ago, and it's hard to say what was acceptable then. Obviously, these things were acceptable. They were being used in this particular jail just right here in the centre of Dubbo. So it's a bit of a flick back to the past.
So a different view on capital punishment is what you're saying back then to what we think about it now.
Well, obviously different view because it was acceptable. That's what happened when people committed crimes. But even the people that were on death row, when you went along and read some of the stories, one of my kids, when we were there, looked at one of the stories and they said, well, this can't be right, Dad. You've made a mistake here because, look, this person, there was some petty crime they'd committed and they're on death row. And I said, no, that's the sort of thing we're talking about. So now you can imagine, even in America where there is capital punishment, it's a fairly extreme crime that you've committed before it's even contemplated about capital punishment. But when you look back at our past, it's not that many decades ago that these people were on death row for things that weren't that extreme by our standards today.
All right, running out of time, just under 2 minutes. You've moved, council has moved $1 million out of the budget, the maintenance budget, to help with a medium-term solution for road fixtures, and you've got also something planned for the crumbling Sheraton Road.
So we've actually moved some money out of our heavy patching budget to our maintenance budget. The problem we've got with our heavy patching budget, we'd always prefer to do heavy patching, which is when you cut out a section of road and then basically redo that section of road. The problem we have there is that when we cut out sections of road, and I saw this terrible video the other day where they'd cut out a section of road to maintain it, and there was water seeping up from underneath the road. There was so much subsoil moisture at the moment. You can't really do the repairs the way you need to do them because there's so much water underneath. So it seems pointless having money sitting in one budget, not being able to use it. So we've transferred $1 million at the council meeting last week across to our maintenance budget, which is more the short-term fix. We'd normally prefer to do less of that because it is literally a short-term fix, but there's no point having the money sitting there. So we've transferred that across to at least keep those repairs ticking over. When we can get the soil dried out enough to do some heavy patching, we'll have to maybe look at how we get some extra money back into that budget. Just very briefly on the Blue Ridge Link Road, we also gave an instruction to our CEO last week to go and acquire some land in Blue Ridge to basically feed another connection point to, you talk about Sheraton Road, when we joined Boundary Road across to, or joined up Boundary Road to Sheraton Road, then it was exposed that Sheraton Road had been crumbling for several years. And now people are using that. That road's typically been used more by heavy trucks from, say, the quarry there. So what we're going to do is take another entrance from the highway across through Blue Ridge and join up across to Sheraton Road behind that area there so that trucks and some of those heavy vehicles don't go along that school area there along Sheraton Road. Now, this was always the plan. This was always the long-term plan. But we're bringing that all forward. It's obviously going to have to happen at some stage, but rather than waiting for that whole development to occur, we're going to bring it forward to try and get that access away from Sheraton Road. It's not going to solve the problem today, but it's bringing it forward dramatically, maybe bring it forward 10 years as to where it would have been built.
All right, and really, really quickly, expressions of interest now open for the Greens. What's this all about?
So this is the old Dubbo City Bowling Club. Dubbo Regional Council has acquired that land and that building there. They didn't acquire it with any business plan, with any reason to acquire it. They just randomly acquired it. So not a lot of strategy or planning from the last council, unfortunately. It's now up to this council to work out what to do with it. That's not a 5-second job. We've got to look at those plans, do some master planning, consider a whole range of things. That's going to take us some time. In the meantime, rather than have it sitting there doing nothing, we're actually asking for expressions of interest. We want to know the organisation. It might be a business, it might be a not-for-profit organisation, it might be some charity organisation, whatever it is, it might be a private individual. We want to know what you want to do with it and how much you're prepared to pay for it, with one strict proviso. You're going to have it for a maximum of 2 years, because in 2 years' time frame we believe we'll have done our planning, worked out what we want to do with it, got some money together, got some sort of budget together for it, and then we'll be ready to do something with it. So it's someone that needs it for a short-term period. And already I've had a few good ideas thrown at me. I won't go through them here on radio because it might bias or look like I'm biased towards some areas. But basically submit that. We want this done fairly quickly. Our next council meeting's been brought forward to the 8th of December because of Christmas. So we want this in by the 7th of December. Go on the website there. You'll see the ability to do that. You just put in some basic details and tell us what you want to do with it and how much you're prepared to pay for it. We'll consider all that on the meeting on the 8th of December.
Thank you. We'll see you in a fortnight. I've held the newsroom off long enough. They'll be very cranky at me. 8:33.